Hi everyone, we're halfway done with the year 2024. I'm Sumera Abdi and with me is Gaurav Mehta, CIO of our alternatives business, and we're here talking about SBI AEON Alpha PMS. So Gaurav, in this time we've seen heightened volatility in the stock market, whether it's international or it's domestic. So in this scenario, how confident are you about maintaining this mid and small cap sort of flavor to the fund? And, is it confidence or is it concern that's driving your decision?
No, I think a very relevant question in today's context, Sumaira, because very clearly, if you look at mid and small cap valuations as an aggregate, they tend to be at this point very expensive versus large caps. But I think, in spite of which, we are very confident of our portfolios, and this is in spite of our portfolios being skewed in favor of mid and small caps for several reasons. I think the first and foremost thing is that when you talk about aggregates, you're talking about, let's say, when you're talking about small cap index, you're talking about 250 odd stocks or even higher number there. But what we are running are very concentrated portfolios. So I think in AEON Alpha, we usually hardly ever go beyond 20-25 stocks. And when you think of the number of mid and small cap stocks in the portfolio, it will be maybe 12-15 stocks, right? Now, from a vast universe of maybe a few hundred stocks, right? Only the top 100 stocks are large caps. The next 150 are mid caps. Everything else is a small cap. So you have a vast, ocean of stocks to pick and choose from, and you're essentially choosing only 15 mid and small caps. So to that extent, you can be very selective, and you can, create portfolios which deviate significantly from these headline indexes. So when we look at our portfolio, for example, whether it's return on equity, whether it's earnings, or whether it's debt equity, on most of those parameters, our small caps are even better than large caps. And similarly, when you look at valuations, as I was saying, the headline index looks expensive, but our portfolio will have a PE which is very similar to Nifty. So to that extent, it isn't sort of we aren't paying high or exorbitant valuations to these stocks. And then the other aspect, which is also very interesting, is that what we are trying to do is create portfolios from a 3-year plus time frame, right? And thereon, if you look at high growth opportunities, you find a lot more in mid and small caps. And interestingly, as you go down the market cap spectrum, your ability to find research arbitrage also increases, right? Because institutional ownership is lower in smaller companies. The number of analysts that are covering those companies is also very insignificant. And to that extent, delving deeper into a small cap idea and creating a differentiated edge versus others, your chances are much higher than in large caps, which is a very, very widely covered universe. So which is why, both high growth opportunities as well as presence of this research arbitrage makes mid and small caps a very lucrative hunting ground for long-term investors. So I think we create portfolios with that 3-year plus time frame. So we don't necessarily pay heed to these top-down valuations and those kind of factors from a here and now basis. But as I said earlier, because we are so selective and we just have to choose 15-20 good stocks, the portfolios deviate quite significantly from what's there in the index. And even with a fair share of mid and small caps, our fundamental attributes are much better than the small cap or mid cap indexes. And our valuations, if anything, are similar to Nifty, not at an exorbitant valuation. So overall, we, in spite of the skew towards mid and small caps, are comfortable with respect to the longer term prospects of the portfolio.
All right, so not concern, but confidence. And, why research arbitrage is so important? Because we have a team of 70 people. Our investment team is more than 70 people strong, which is the largest in the Indian industry. So, that is what gives us that edge that Gaurav was speaking about. But Gaurav, in terms of the election, it wasn't entirely what was expected, right? Do you expect any sort of adverse impact or any impact at all on the India story? Is it intact as such, or some sort of portfolio changes need to be made to sort of adapt to the new dynamic?
Again, very relevant question, Sumera. So overall, and this is again something that we have spoken in the past about. Our portfolio is positioned around 3 main themes that we think will play out in India over the next few years. The first of them is this entire industrials and capital expenditure and manufacturing related theme. I think the formation of the government and then the allocation of ministries does suggest that there will be policy continuity on that front. So this investment-led recovery in India should continue, and as a result, this entire investment capex theme should continue. So I don't think there is any change there. The second theme that we've been positive on is this entire, rise in per capita GDP in the country, and we are now, very close to reaching $3,000 of per capita GDP in the next few quarters, if not years. And as that happens, you see a very significant uptick in discretionary consumption, and you also see that people save more, and as a result, investment products, saving products, etc., also gain a lot of traction. Now, on this piece, again, we don't think that fundamentally there's been any change. If anything, a weaker than expected mandate perhaps would bring to the front the fact that there was pain at the mass level. So households were suffering and mass consumption was suffering, and this can actually entail a bigger focus on mass consumption, and in fact help discretionary stocks which cater to mass consumption. So if anything, this trend has, or this theme has strengthened rather than weakened. So the long term rise in per capita GDP is structural, no change there. From a here and now basis, maybe some policy shift towards supporting households and consumption will actually help this theme. So again, no change there, if anything, positive change. And the third theme that we've been very positive on is this entire physical assets and natural resources, and which again is a more global theme, because globally there's been a lot of underinvestment in commodities. More importantly, what you've seen over the last few years is there has been a significant policy shift towards fiscal expansion, versus monetary accommodation, which was a thing of the past 10 years. And in this environment where you have a lot of fiscal expansion, in general we see that there is higher tolerance for growth and inflation. Governments spend a lot more on infrastructure to revive blue collar jobs and so on. And this environment overall is something that's conducive for natural resources, for hard assets, for infrastructure and so on. And again, that's something that hasn't changed, with respect to the political outcome. So on an overall basis, we think that the key themes that we thought would drive the India story remain intact, and that's what is represented in the portfolio. So we don't think there's any need to make any changes to the portfolio. One thing which I do think should change, and we also measure market sentiment, and it is indeed reflecting a bit of heightened complacency at this point. So we think that a lot of this speculative action which have become mainstream over the last few months will abate, and that in turn will bring back focus to fundamentals and quality and those aspects, longevity of growth, etc. Which, if anything, I think for portfolios like us should be a positive change. So again, fingers crossed, but stay optimistic about the future.